The depreciation of banknotes went with great speed. By the end of 1920, the cost of a paper ruble fell compared to 1914, almost 13,000 times, on New Ways, ed. 2, ed. SRT, p. 158. With such rapidity of depreciation, the money already performed poorly its functions. The naturalization of exchange and savings became a characteristic domestic phenomenon. Having received his salary, the worker and employee tried to immediately turn it into some kind of food. Urban residents changed clothes, furnishings, etc., directly to bread and other agricultural products. The kulaks, who, despite all the prohibitive measures, managed to speculate in bread, various objects were accumulated. Cuts of the manufacture, costumes, dresses, furniture, gramophones, even pianos and piano speculative accumulation took such a bizarre natural form. Some saleable products turned into a kind of monetary commodity. So, for example, in the Volga region on an illegal market the role of a monetary commodity was played by salt imported from Astrakhan by sacks. The same role was played almost everywhere by rye and wheat flour. Such money was used by small speculators sacks. Larger clandestine predators speculators were exchanging goods for gold coins of pre-war coinage. After the publication of the decree of the Council of People's Commissars on March 4, 1919, the only source of money for all state enterprises was the appropriation of the state budget for the painting of national revenues and expenditures. All the cash receipts of enterprises were deposited in the revenue of the Treasury. In connection with the transition to the budget financing of all industrial enterprises, all shares and shares of joint stock companies and partnerships whose enterprises were nationalized and sequestered were annulled. At least these enterprises have not yet been transferred to the state, but were used without compensation by their former owners. The private debts of enterprises, made before the nationalization, and the debts of state enterprises to the People's Bank and state credit institutions were also cancelled. The depreciation of money and the naturalization of economic relations in 1920 led to the fact that previously existing financial sources lost all economic importance. During 1920 a number of decisions of the Council of People's Commissars cancelled the collection of payments from state enterprises for electricity and water supply, abolished the accruals in favor of the state for the products of the nationalized industry, cancelled the collection of fees from Soviet institutions, enterprises and farms for the use of mail, telephone, telegraph, radio and so forth. With minimal firm prices for the normalized products released to the population, the role of the state's cash income from the sale of products has also lost economic significance. On December 4, 1920, the Council of People's Commissars issued a decree on free rations to workers and employees entitled to rations. The wage of workers and employees in cash amounted to less than 7% of their real wages in 1920. The remaining 93% of the salary amounted to rations, utilities, housing, etc. Despite the rapid depreciation of money, they played a significant role during the Civil War. The issue of paper money in the prevailing immensely difficult situation was a means of concentrating significant values in the hands of the state. But the value of emissions decreased from year to year. If it is conventionally to accept the state's revenue from the two most significant sources at that time, emissions and surplus supplies, for 100, then it turns out that the share of the surplus appropriation grew from 20 to 70% between 1918-19 and 1920-21. These figures once again show that the main mass of industrial products was accounted for and distributed among consumers in kind. Transportation services, utilities, etc., with a few exceptions, turned out to be free. This process of naturalization can also be illustrated by the following comparison of the figures of gross output with data on the movement of the state budget.